if you're looking for really detailed analysis about this on both sides, it's going to be tough to try and give you what you want because you have Jake Collier, who hasn't fought in the UFC in just about 3 years. And he split time between middleweight and light heavyweight, making his heavyweight debut with the promotion, taking on UFC debutant Tom Aspinall. And Matt, I can tell you quite a bit about Tom Aspinall from his time with Cage Warriors. He's a guy that trains at Team Cowban, and we've talked about them before. Mike Grundy, you're going to have Darren Till coming out of that camp. Tom Aspinall is like this jack of all trades who had a really hard time picking up fights in the regional scene, and he's had 2 with Cage Warriors somewhat recently. But before that, he took some time away from MMA to get into boxing. And he had a tough time trying to get fights in boxing because he had a background in MMA, and the 2 kind of clash heads in the UK. Why is all of that important? Because if you look at Tom Aspinall and his background coming into MMA, he was a British junior national wrestling champion. He has a background in jiu-jitsu. He's a BJJ coach at that gym. Oh, by the way, so he has an amateur boxing career, if you want to call it that. Who does he train with, Matt? Try and take a guess.
Anthony Joshua.
No, but pretty close. Tyson Fury.
There we go.
Trained at a Team Fury to get into boxing. And if you look at his last 2 fights in particular, really nice stance, really good combination, tons of power, really good footwork. He's light on the balls of his feet, which you like to see, and you don't see typically out of a lot of heavyweight guys. So Tom Aspinall has tons of stuff going on for him. Really tall for the division, really long guy. I know his second to last fight, the guy went to leg kick him. He checked it, and the guy broke his leg. But in his last fight, really strung together a nice combination. Pretty much knocked out his opponent on the feet against the cage drop. Wha-bam, fight's over. Tom Aspinall, really good pedigree. Good to see him get a level of competition like this. And I know he was booked. He's booked against Collier earlier on in the spring. There's been a couple of different opponents. Of course, that one canceled due to COVID. For Jake Collier, what could I dig up on this guy? I mean, he was a former RFA middleweight champ in 2014. Had a win over Gabriel Checo, who's still doing the darn thing. But since then, 2-2 in the UFC at middleweight, 1-1 at light heavyweight. He's got a loss to Devin Clark. He won his last fight. Man, the guy's been away for a really long time. Had a USADA suspension from 2019 due to, it looks like a tainted supplement. It really does. From what we read up on the USADA website, it was a pre-workout that had a stimulant that wasn't supposed to be in there. So chalk it up to a tainted supplement. Like, it could be something that he went in and bought at GNC or Walmart, and it just so happened that there was something that wasn't supposed to be in there. You get different vats of different things when you're buying stuff like that. You never know exactly what you're going to get. So I threw it out there. Will Martin, and if you're in the prediction game, you know who Will is. He said, anybody know what the hell Jake Collier's been up to the last 2 or 3 years? Was he a victim of USADA by chance? I tweeted out and said, you ever try and talk about a fight and have no sweet clue what to say about somebody other than he fought a few years ago, but he's been gone a while and suspended by USADA at one point. And I said, well, Will's great, and if we're stumped, then it's a wash. In steps E. Spencer Kite. You might be familiar with him. Spent some time with Fanside. Writes for the UFC. He says, spoke to him, being Collier, ahead of this one, story coming in the next couple of days. Basically went surgery, 10-month suspension, then COVID, but you should still read it when the feature drops. So make sure you check out his work. I'm a little leery about the whole COVID thing. I'm leery about the suspension. I'm leery about him moving up to 265 pounds to take on a guy that's a good boxer, has a wrestling and jiu-jitsu background. This is one of those ones where I get it. Like, the odds have shifted by about 50 points towards Aspinall. Collier's a plus 180. Aspinall's minus 220. I wouldn't put any dough on this one. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I think Aspinall's going to win for sure. But there's too many. The risk of the unknown is certainly here. Maybe Jake Collier went out and for like 3 years straight,
just like George St. Pierre himself, and got better in that whole time. But the good thing about Aspinall, though, if he is able to get this win, really big guy for the heavyweight division, but still has all those qualities of... We talk about this a lot. When you have a guy from a lower weight class moving up to a higher weight class, both guys are going to have some advantages and some disadvantages just because of the competition that they fought. Because Aspinall... He moves kind of like a middleweight, but he has a heavyweight frame. Only 27 for the heavyweight division, which is extremely young. When you really think about when a prime is for a heavyweight, it's like 35 until 42 kind of. So really long time to really progress throughout his career. I think they kind of gave him a softball and toss on this one. Really easy one to hit out of the park. Because Tom Aspinall, not that he's going to go, achieve all-time great status by any means, but he's a guy at the heavyweight division who has a really high ceiling, a lot of promise going forward. So I do think this is going to be an easy win for him.
And I mean, one of his 2 losses was against Łukasz Porobiec, who you might recognize from the regional scene in Europe. Lost by a legal 12-6 elbows. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I think the ceiling's definitely there with Aspinall. Jake Collier, I mean, good to see him back. I'll give him that. Like, it's a redemption story off of everything that's happened, and of stories you should read E. Spencer Kites. But overall, yeah, I mean, majority of everyone's going with Aspinall here. Out of, you know, a fair bit of votes on Tapology, it's more than 80% going with Aspinall. So gonna agree with the crowd. Gonna go with Aspinall. Out of all the tape that I've seen, he could be a force. It's just tough to get the experience around the British regional scene. And then it's tough to morph into a good heavyweight at the UFC level where you haven't faced that competition. It's not like there's those, again, Cyril Ascaris, Christian Columbus,
Marcelo
Golm, Anthony Freight Train Hamiltons to fight against.
Some of the favorites.
There's not a lot of guys like that left over. I mean, I'm sure you could pick some out, but it's tough. So both going with Tom Aspinall. I'm looking forward to this one because, again, risk of the unknown, and it should be a good one. We have 15 previews coming up for this card, including an extended look at Robert Whittaker and Darren Till. So you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.